Hello viewers and welcome to another match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today we have the featured match of the top 32 of the spring 2016 season of Sam Mann's Black Crusade, his online Conquest LCG competitive league. Today's game is going to be featuring Urien Rakarth against Torquemada Coteaz. Urien is going to be piloted by none other than Seth Rosen, the gentleman who took the runner-up. He was the second place position during the 2015 Conquest LCG World Championships, and Paul Steiner is a veritable pillar within our community. He runs the Conquest Games Results statistical database. I believe that he was champion of the first ever Octagon tournament back when it was called the WA, and both of our players are deciding whether or not they want to keep their opening hands. Initiative is going to be in the possession of Coteaz, and this should be a hell of a game because these are two spectacularly talented players, and quite clearly they've each chosen a rather unconventional warlord here. In particular, Seth Rosen, who's managed to pilot Urien Rakarth to the, single elimination portion of a 187-person tournament. So they're both deciding whether or not they want to keep. In assessing Seth's opening hand for economy, he's got a Void Pirate, he's got a promotion, he's got Siren Zithlex to abuse planet number 1, I guess also worth noting is he's got the Baleful Mandrake and Hypex Injector combo. It appears both of our players have decided to keep. They must be on Skype and they're talking at the moment. But let's assess our opening layout of planets here. Planet number 1 is going to be Barless, that forced random card discard planet. We've got a Rattling Sniper strategically positioned at that location to potentially reel in a couple of cards it can attack during ranged. Then, once it's exhausted, it could be sacrificed to give Coteaz his 3 attack value swing. And green planets, we've got 1, 3, 4, and 5. So that could be a victory condition for Coteaz. And then for Urien, let's see, I suppose Siren Zithlex is going to be played somewhere. Would that be Planum? Would it be Taurus? So planet 4 is going to be that unit count planet, and it's going to be just absolutely critical that both of our players here pay very close attention to just how many units their opponents have. Coteaz is slightly advantaged in this situation because he can sacrifice units, like he could kill an enemy unit, but in the process remove one of his own units, so that Urien, if Urien has the audacity to attempt to trigger Taurus, he isn't necessarily going to be able to activate that battle ability. So we've got Siren at 4. Any enemy units deployed to that planet are going to be showing up exhausted, whether they're ambushed or deployed conventionally. We have a Escalating Shrine Guard at 3, played by Paul. It's currently a 2/2. Of course, there's no Broderick War global bonus since he's playing Coteaz. And we've now got this Void Pirate positioned at planet number 2. Coteaz is disadvantaged just as a Warlord, because if he shows up at, say, planet number 2 by himself, he can't actually win a battle. The best he can accomplish is a stalemate without Catachan Outpost or his signature attachment or anything along those lines. So he can deny his opponent some resources and he can prevent his opponent from being able to trigger a battle ability, but it just doesn't necessarily work out terribly favorably for anybody involved. Although I guess Coteaz does win, command by default. So we've got Coteaz's henchmen at planet number 2. They're a 1/3 when they leave play. Coteaz is readied. No matter what planet Coteaz happens to be at, that Void Pirate is going to be promoted, so it's 3 command icons versus 1. We also have a copy of Escalating Shrine Guard at planet number 1, so it's looking rather unfavorable for Urien to go to that planet. But what exactly do we have here? Urien and Paul both have 3 resources remaining, so we've got a couple of copies of Rakarth's Experimentations, which is going to be playable for the modified cost of 0 by Urien. We could see Baleful Mandrake at any planet, and let's say Coteaz is at that planet. It could be attack for 3 during ranged. With a Hypex Injector on it, you could play Rakarth's Experimentations, the Baleful Mandrake readies. You could do another Experimentations, which both of those can potentially deal damage to the enemy Warlord, and that Hypex Injector currently could allow the Mandrake to attack a total of 3 times, and I suppose also just worth noting is this Klavex War Leader means that Coteaz is definitely going to have to look out for Urien hitting 4 resources. Seth, when I had him on my channel to do a community spotlight, I believe he said at one point he removed Klavex War Leaders from his deck and just played with his opponent fearing them, so they, shield their units unnecessarily and whatnot. But we'll have to see how combat ends up going here and where the players send their warlords for command. That Baleful Mandrake is positioned at planet number 3. I would not be surprised to have it pick up a Hypex Injector just to deter Coteaz from showing up at that same planet. Paul goes ahead and passes, and just in regard to combat tricks that we might see for him as a combat action, he could use Bolster the Defense to put this Inquisitorial Fortress into play and rout an enemy unit. He could also do the Emperor's Warrant to exhaust a unit, and then it deals damage equal to its attack value to another unit. But if you were to do that to something like the Baleful Mandrake, you could exhaust it, but then you're forced to have it deal its attack value to another present unit, like your Sakhalem Shrine Guard. So it's really only great if you've got 2 enemy units present. So at this point, Urien has thrown out that Hypex Injector. And that baleful mandrake, although I guess judging by its hair, it is a paleful mandrake. Both players have passed. Where are they deciding to go? Urien is going to go to planet number 2, and Coteaz is going to go to planet number 2. So let's see how this ends up working for our players. Planet number 1 is going to be Paul's command. It's going to be 2 cards drawn by him, a copy of Staging Ground and powerful economy unit for the following turn. And then for Seth, he ended up getting a total of 2 cards and 3 resources, so he definitely made out superiorly from this turn's command, thanks in part to that Void Pirate. He ended up drawing another copy of Void Pirate, as well as a Warlock Destructor, which is going to be a fantastic combat unit. Urien is not the world's most combat-savvy warlord, so if he's got a Warlock Destructor, that would have worked out pretty well for him. The only problem is that our players on Skype here, Barless goes uncontested, and that forced random card discard was that Warlock Destructor showing up in Seth's discard pile. I think if he had his choice, he'd have probably picked a copy of Rakarth's Experimentations to be lost, as opposed to that Destructor, but let's see how things go at planet number 2. So this battle ability on the line is the opportunity to rout a target non-warlord unit. I think the perfect target would either be this Baleful Mandrake, or I suppose Siren Zithlex wouldn't be the worst choice in the world either. Paul naturally has initiative. Coteaz's henchman is going to take a swing, and that is going to be a dead copy of Void Pirate. And now what kind of sucks for Urien is Urien could attack Coteaz for 2, and it looks like that is going to be the case. Now Coteaz will be able to sacrifice his henchman, but you have to do that sacrifice prior to Coteaz being exhausted, which is a bit of a shame. So, like, Coteaz gets the attack bonus, then the unit leaves play, it can't ready the Warlord, and then Coteaz exhausts to attack. So it looks like Urien is going to be able to win this battle, and I'll be curious to see if Seth ends up ditching one of these experimentations as shields. So it's going to be up to Paul. Is he going to swing, or is he going to retreat? Does he want to deal 3 points of damage to this rather fragile Dark Eldar Warlord, knowing full well that planet number 5 is Iridial? Looks like he's going to swing for what appears to be 0 if he's exhausting his Warlord, and I guess that's going to bring us to the end of the combat round. Seth does not have 4 resources to use a Klavex War Leader, and I guess really the only thing that Paul could have done is he could have done this bolster the, or I'm sorry, no, it's the highest number of army units you control at a planet, so he now only controls 1 army unit at a planet, so he could only do bolster the defense to put into play a staging ground, and then he could staging ground into play a copy of the Elysian Assault Team or the Iron Guard recruits. I suppose another thing we could conceivably see with this Coteaz's henchman is if it were to leave play through being sacrificed by Coteaz, that could result in an Elysian Assault Team being dropped into play, and certainly Paul has 2 value shield cards. And initiative, Urien is just trying to pour the damage tokens onto Torquemada onto Torquemada Coteaz, but we see the Emperor's Warrant discarded to kind of interject itself between that effect. Urien is in no real danger of being destroyed at any time now, and here it looks like things are going to go a little bit bad for Urien, so there's that staging ground. And is this going to be an Iron Guard recruits, or is it going to be an Elysian assault team? Let's see. Paul's got enough resources for either. Okay, yep, it's going to be the Iron Guard recruits, so the recruits are going to be able to attack for 1. Coteaz is going to be able to, say, sacrifice either the recruits or his henchmen to swing for 3, and that could be Urien at just a single hit point, and then that's going to be Urien having to retreat, and then that's going to be one of Urien's units being routed if Theron is lost. So we saw that Iron Guard recruits sacrificed. Coteaz is going to be able to swing at Urien for 3, and do bear in mind that this is the single elimination portion of the Black Crusade, so if Seth ends up losing this one, if Paul ends up losing this one, then that is going to be the game here. So unfortunately, we have our screen slightly adjusted. Hopefully that's not going to affect your ability to view this match, like at all. And I think I just turned it back here. But now we're approaching the end of the combat round. All of these units are exhausted. Okay, so limit once per attack. Here, Coteaz ends up sacrificing another unit, and I happen to forget about this effect here. So Coteaz can do his sacrifice limit once per attack, but Coteaz sacrifices his henchman. The henchman, of course, readies Coteaz, and interestingly enough, we did not actually see Elysian Assault Team interplay, and that is quite clearly because Urien Rakarth is already bloodied. So unfortunately, yeah, and our screen is just getting adjusted all over the place. So let's see. Coteaz won that battle through the sneaky use of a sacrifice to get rid of his signature unit when it was already exhausted. Urien is now bloodied. He's no more than a 1/6. He doesn't get his discount anymore for playing torture events, and Theron has resulted in the routing of that Baleful Mandrake, so that is going to be a round 1 bloodying of our Dark Eldar Warlord. We've gone through an HQ phase. That's 4 resources, 2 cards for each of our players. Our Dark Eldar player is now in full possession of our initiative token. The draws for Seth, who's now sitting at 7 resources, were a 2-cost, 2-command icon Incubus Warrior that can swing for 3. He also got a copy of Slith Mercenary, but both of our players are awfully close to one another in regard to command. And then Paul, all he has to do is destroy Urien, and then this game is going to be his. He did manage to stumble upon a copy of the monumentally valuable Preemptive Barrage after putting into play a copy of the Routing Inquisitorial Fortress. So, our new planet number 5 is going to be Karnath, the planet which allows you to trigger the battle ability of any other planet in play. We've got a Void Pirate, which has taken up residence at planet number 4. We've got a Slith Mercenary played to planet number 5 because Paul has passed. Now, Urien still has resources. Urien's movement is going to be constricted by the presence of a Baleful Mandrake in his HQ. Hypex Injector can be used, like, let's say Urien shows up at planet number 1, you play a Dark Eldar faction event, your Baleful Mandrake can ready to be able to attack during that ranged skirmish round. Urien does decide to go to planet number 1, so it looks like he's going to attempt to win command on each and every planet, and now this is where things get very interesting indeed, because if Urien ends up being destroyed, then that is going to be the game for Paul. So, unfortunately, 2 of these units are exhausted at planet number 1. Neither player is going to win command at planet number 1, but that is going to be a giant income for Urien here. His signature event doesn't pull in much command, but of course, when you've only got 2 copies thereof in your deck, maybe you don't see it at all, and that's going to be an incredible 5 cards and 3 resources for the obviously disadvantaged Urien, at least, in regard to frailty of Warlord is involved. So Rakarth's experimentations, Seth has named out a card type on Skype, and it's going to be up to Paul to either discard a copy of the chosen type or otherwise add a point of damage to his Warlord. Looks like he does take a point of damage on his Warlord. Hypex Injector results in Baleful Mandrake being readied, but this Inquisitorial Fortress can at any point remove the Baleful Mandrake from that planet. We could see a preemptive barrage give Coteaz the ability to attack Urien during the range skirmish round for 3. I suppose what we could see is we could see Coteaz sacrifice this soldier, we could put an Elysian assault team into play, and then preemptive barrage on both of those, and then that would be 5 outgoing damage toward Urien, but because Urien has drawn so many cards, one of those was his signature attachment, the Ichor Gauntlet, which of course has a shield value of 3. It allows you to essentially replicate the effects of any torture event card that you play, but now that Urien isn't getting his significant discount to those, that's not nearly as appetitive a prospect as it normally happens to be. Coteaz has got 8 total hit points. Looks like that Baleful Mandrake is going to have an opportunity to attack Coteaz, and I suppose we could see another copy of Rakarth's experimentations result in the Baleful Mandrake readying again, and Paul is barely going to be able to shield to survive this effect. So are we going to see Inquisitorial Fortress or not? I have, again, as we see Rakarth's experimentations played, there's no way of knowing what card type that Seth has called out over Skype, but will we see Coteaz take a point of damage or not? What's really brutal about this is if we do not see this Baleful Mandrake routed, if Coteaz, like either he takes a point of damage, which he does, so he takes a point of damage, even if he would have shielded, he no longer has an adequate number of shield cards to survive the attack of this Baleful Mandrake, so it's going to be Inquisitorial Fortress removing this unit from the planet, or otherwise it's going to be Coteaz bloodied. If Coteaz decides to hang around at the planet, Urien's going to have an opportunity to attack first, and that is, really pushing it. Like, if you rout the Baleful Mandrake and then you take a swing from Urien, you'll have to use your preemptive barrage just to survive, but what we could potentially see would be Urien attack, and then preemptive barrage will be discarded for shields. Staging Ground will drop a Snakebite Thug into play. We'll see the Sacalum Shrine Guard sacrificed to bring into play an Elysian Assault Team, and then 3, 6, 8 total points of outgoing damage. We could drop that to 5 thanks to this, and we could drop that to 4 thanks to this shield card. So it looks like Urien is still fine, even though Paul can do some pretty nasty stuff, and provided that Paul can prevent his Warlord from being bloodied, if he does manage to somehow trigger Iridial, which of course his interest in that planet is going to be quite clearly telegraphed, he'll have the opportunity to remove an incredible amount of damage from his Warlord. Looks like Paul is going to do something interesting here. So Sacalum Shrine Guard is going to be sacrificed. And are we going to see Paul try to trick Seth into targeting a copy of Elysian Assault Team? Like, what exactly are we going to see happen now that Paul is targeting his Shrine Guard? Okay, so the Shrine Guard is gone, it's sacrificed. Coteaz is now going to be able to attack for 3. There's the Elysian Assault Team, and now is he presenting a difficult, very interesting choice. This is going to be preemptive barrage right here, so it's going to be Coteaz and the Elysian Assault Team with the ability to attack during ranged, but of course the Baleful Mandrake is going to have the opportunity to attack during ranged first. Note that Paul has gotten rid of each and every shield card in his hand, so he is at a huge risk of his Warlord being bloodied, and I believe on the bloodied side, Coteaz himself is no more than a mere 1/6, akin to Urien Rakarth, and that's kind of saying something. So, are we going to see Inquisitorial Fortress remove the Baleful Mandrake? Are we going to see Urien hang around at that planet? I guess it's all going to be up to Seth. He does have a couple of shield cards to rely on, but what exactly is he going to do? I guess in regard to options, Seth Well, frankly, all hinges upon whether or not we see that Inquisitorial Fortress, and I can only imagine that at the moment, Paul is trying to decide, does he want to use his staging ground to maybe bluff his Snakebite Thug into play at this planet? But I think it's probably going to be pretty damn important that he retains one card in hand, just for at least the ability to bluff poor Urien here. But I'm going to go ahead and pause for a moment, and let's see what Paul decides. All right, so Coteaz exhausts, and I suppose I must have lost track. I guess now that these units have gained ranged, the Baleful Mandrake has already used its combat turn, so now it'll be Coteaz's opportunity to take a swing at either Urien or the Baleful Mandrake. So my apologies for making that small mistake, my dear viewers. I totally forgot that the Baleful Mandrake attacked, and then, thanks to an action, we saw Coteaz end up, it was his opportunity to take a combat turn because it was still within the same range skirmish round. We saw the Ichor Gauntlet used, discarded as a shield. Inquisitorial Fortress was sacrificed to remove the Baleful Mandrake from that planet, and now the Elysian Assault team has taken a swing, of course, during the range skirmish round, and that's going to be 2 points of damage to Urien Rakarth. Looks like Urien has called Coteaz's bluff. That is going to be a bloodied Astra Militarum faction warlord, and now Urien is left exhausted at that planet. Staging ground is going to drop into play a copy of Snakebite Thug. The Snakebite Thug is going to be able to swing at Urien for 3, and Urien only has a Hypex injector to use as a shield. So Paul is totally out of tricks to end up destroying Urien Rakarth here, but the Snakebite Thug is going to, at the very least, deal 2 points of damage to Urien, and then even though Urien's economy is incredible, he's really in a very dangerous position with his Warlord. So my sincerest apologies for missing that Coteaz trigger earlier, for spacing the sequence of range skirmish combat turns, since combat, of course, is a relatively dynamic thing. And here's something I'd totally not paid any attention to, so I had not taken into consideration the number of resources that Urien Rakarth was holding on to. A Clavex Warleader drops into play, kills that Snakebite Thug that did damage itself. We come to the end of a combat round. Urien Rakarth retreats from that planet, and that's going to be that copy of Clavex Warleader staying at the planet, and Coteaz decides to retreat with his Rattling Deadeye that would otherwise have just ineffectually died. So we see the Clavex Warleader win this planet. The Sacalum Shrine Guard is going to be routed. That is currently going to be a red material icon in the victory display of Urien, and with both of our warlords being beaten to absolute hell, it's just a green strongpoint icon in Paul's victory display. So it's interesting seeing our two players' warlords just in such rotten condition. It's going to be very important that Urien either stays far away from combat or manages to trigger Iridial, but if Urien shows up at a planet, I guess what's really interesting about this situation is if Coteaz, let's say Coteaz goes to Iridial because maybe that's where Urien is likely to go. Okay, Paul got a lucky break with this Inquisitorial Fortress, because I was going to say if that had not been a draw, let's say Coteaz goes to Iridial, Urien goes to Iridial as well. Urien would be dropping off this copy of Baleful Mandrake, and for every torture event that Urien managed to play, that would be the Baleful Mandrake readying, and that might result in a dead Coteaz. Coteaz is currently not holding on to any shields in hand whatsoever, and all he's got is a one command icon economy unit, so he, unless he does like Inquisitorial Fortress now as a deploy stall, which would be kind of silly, he's going to be in a really, really difficult situation. So obviously, Urien is doing great in regard to command. We've gone through an HQ phase. Our new 5th planet, last planet of the game here, is going to be Yvarn, and currently on Iridial, Urien has only got a copy of this Void Pirate, which isn't going to be able to benefit from something like a copy of Hypex Injector, but as soon as Paul passes, we could see a Slith Mercenary played at that planet, and we could see Hypex Injector played on the Slith Mercenary, and then we could see something like this Power from Pain used during combat, and if Urien shows up at Iridial, that would ready the Baleful Mandrake. It would also ready this hypothetical Slith mercenary at this planet, but instead, okay, God, that makes much more sense. Planet number 1 is currently Planum. We've got a Baleful Mandrake at Planum. It's got a Hypex injector. Spoiler alert, if Coteaz shows up at planet number 1, that is going to be a very poor life choice. So he's probably not going to do that. That means that that unit is going to be able to move itself to this planet here, and Inquisitorial Fortress is only going to be able to remove 1 unit. It's going to be able to get rid of 1 Baleful Mandrake with a Hypex injector, but not both. So things are looking very interesting because Urien is going to be able to win quite a few resources in regard to command, and Urien need not necessarily show up at planet number 3 like he could decide to risk everything going for the healing planet, but he's only got 1 hit point, and that's kind of an obvious destination for him. So both of our players are deciding where exactly they want to send their warlords. Looks like Urien decided to go for planet number 4, and that is going to just be no command 1 for Paul, and that's going to be 3 planets worth of command 1 for Seth. By the time we see this battle finish at planet number 1, Seth is going to have 2 units that are likely going to be readying at this planet, and that about sucks that we got a copy of Searing Brand, because these units are going to start disappearing in pretty short order here. So in regard to income, it was a total of 3 cards and 3 resources for Seth. He's sitting at Carnath, the planet which allows you to trigger the battle ability of any other planet in play, such as Iridial, for instance. And I guess let's just see what happens. It's going to be Paul with the first opportunity to take a non-range skirmish combat swing, but Paul has got no shield icons whatsoever, like no shield cards in hand. Seth has got 4 resources, so here's what we could see. We could see Inquisitorial Fortress remove the Baleful Mandrake here, but as soon as, okay, we could see Power from Pain played for 2, and then the Baleful Mandrake would have an opportunity to hit Coteaz once, but because Urien is bloodied, he's going to be 1 resource shy of being able to do Searing Brand, and then that would ready his Mandrake again, and it would have the opportunity to kill Coteaz. So, planet number 1, that battle concluded. The Baleful Mandrake was repositioned from 1 to 4, that's a green and a blue icon added to Seth's victory display. Paul only has 1 resource, he's got this Inquisitorial Fortress, and what, if anything, does Paul have to do? There's that Power from Pain, and it looks like, okay, well, wait a sec. So, okay, so we saw the Baleful Mandrake exhaust, and I'm not sure why it ended up being exhausted. Urien is moved away from that planet, and we've got Power from Pain sitting on the tabletop. So what exactly is going on? So when Planum was activated, the Baleful Mandrake went to this planet, and it arrives unexhausted and ready. There was 1 ready and 1 not ready Baleful Mandrake. So if the first Mandrake had an opportunity to take a shot, and then we saw the other Mandrake routed, that would have kind of been the game here. So I suppose we'll have to see what's happening with Urien there. So why don't I pause and let me ask what's going on. Okay, so it looks like there's maybe a little bit of a reversion of our game state here. Okay, yep, so it looks like I think Paul has just gone ahead and called a concession. So Paul could have used his Inquisitorial Fortress to remove the ready Baleful Mandrake that moved from Planum. Power from Pain would have readied this copy of the Baleful Mandrake, The Mandrake could have hit Coteaz for 3. Coteaz, as the only ready Astra Militarum unit, could have swung for 1 at Urien, but then we could have seen Hypex Injector or Searing Brand used to, like shield against that effect. That would have been all the damage removed from Urien, and then Coteaz would have been killed, or if Coteaz would have just retreated, these Astra Militarum units would have been killed. That would have been the Healing Planet resolving, expunging all the damage from Urien Rakarth, and I suppose, long story short, Paul must have saved himself a giant headache because he had one resource. Clearly, Urien was in a fantastically favored position economically. I mean, if you look at planet number 1, he was set up very well to win this planet because it's got Siren Zithlex sitting at it. He easily could have used his resources to set himself up at Iridial, and that would have been the game for Urien. Even if we would not have seen this, I suppose we can call it a weird modified assassination victory at our current little planet here. So very interesting ending to this game. But congratulations to Seth Rosen for advancing Urien Rakarth to the top 16 of the spring 2016 season of the Black Crusade. Everybody shits on Urien, but he did a pretty damn good job today. Paul is a very talented player, and this ended up being a hell of a game, but Paul Steiner has been eliminated, Seth Rosen advances, and my dear viewers, I hope you enjoyed today's featured match. So, as always, if you did enjoy this content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already subscribed, share this stuff so that more people are exposed to Conquest. It helps grow our community, and if you ever want to get in touch with me, I'm on social media like Facebook and Twitter. Feel free to get in touch anytime, and if you ever feel any inclination whatsoever to help support the Hive Tyrant, I would be absolutely honored were you to consider making a contribution to my Patreon page. And even if Patreon is not your thing, in the very near future I'm looking to make the Hive Tyrant branded playmats, just like my octagon background you see here, available for public consumption at a very, very, very affordable price to help fund my trip to the 2016 World Championship. So, thank you once again for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.